So, this video might finish my channel, but it doesn't really matter anyways. I'm preaching to the already converted here. And I'm my Awakening Canada tractor tour. I'm pointing at the tractor like you can see it. Yeah, okay. Progresses. I was out on the weekend and, well, anyways. So, on Sunday, I spent like 4 hours trying to see what was going on in Sri Lanka. And what happened is I came up with a fictional story that my fictional publisher wants me to draw up as a manuscript, and maybe I'll get a fictional advance. So anyways, again, fictional story here, right? Story time with Uncle Carl. I couldn't find anything in my fictional story from Sri Lanka, like for the last 2 weeks. And I've seen some comments to that effect on Sky News Australia and stuff in my fictional manuscript to the same effect. What is going on in Sri Lanka? So I found a half a dozen Sri Lanka news channels. So in my fictional manuscript, I went there, and there's nothing about what's going on in their country. I mean, it imploded. That's not fiction. But in my fictional account, the Sri Lankan news showed nothing about that. Like, maybe they don't have to, because the people know that they're broke and starving and have no fuel and medicine, I suppose. So maybe they don't have to talk about it. All I could find was the same cute kitten stories of something about some elephants, some issues with some elephants, and something to do with one of the sports teams. And yeah, there was no news. So then I decided to look at a couple of other things. So I went to the WEF website. Quite a big, long website. You spend a lot of time roaming around in there. And in my fictional manuscript, it would be quite scary. So the board of trustees of my fictional WEF, see, I want to explain this is all fiction. There's no information here, so my video can't be shut down and my channel closed down because it's misinformation or disinformation, because it's not information, it's fiction. So in my fictional account, the board of trustees, not just the members, mind you, but the governing body, to name just a few, and I'll step out of the fictional manuscript for a moment, and in reality, Chrystia Freeland has recently been, she's our Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Finance in Canada, has been promoted to the board of directors. So then back to my fictional manuscript. The president of the Red Cross is a member. Yeah, I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions on that one. With that business. The boogeyman. Again, my fictional manuscript. And in my fictional manuscript, the president of the European Central Bank, pretty big player on the global scene, right? That individual sits on the board of trustees of the WEF. Now, in my fictional manuscript, if you move to the WHO, the World Health Organization, saturated with WEF members. Yeah. And if you go to the World Health Organization and the United Nations, you see a lot of, in my fictional manuscript, that I'm presenting to my fictional publisher, you'll see a lot of what I refer to in the fictional manuscript, I'd say inbreeding between the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, and the United Nations. In my fictional manuscript, you'll see, a big multinational company, for example. The CEO will sit on the World Economic Forum, and the chairman of the board of the same company will be on the World Health Organization. You know what I mean? Again, in my fictional manuscript. So then, in context to the fictional Sri Lanka in my fictional manuscript, the International Monetary Fund. There are 190 countries that pay into the International Monetary Fund, creating this big, chunk of dough sitting there, right? And the countries that then pay their quotas, the members, can then borrow from the IMF should they get in trouble, like my fictional Sri Lanka. The quota system of how they pay is convoluted and complex, and I'm not going to bother in my fictional manuscript explaining who pays how much and how much money's in the fund and stuff. Well, I'll just make those figures up, you know what I mean? They can't be trusted anyways, Out of those 190 member countries in my fictional manuscript, 92 of them are in debt. And, well, I might change that to 107. Really doesn't matter, right? Now, here's the thing. In my fictional manuscript, the IMF, and it states in my fictional manuscript's website of the IMF that they always get their money back. Always. And they get it first. Let's say, in my fictional manuscript, that a country like a fictional Greece or a fictional Argentina, who's in big financial trouble in my fictional manuscript, wants to default on their payments. Well, first off, the IMF gets paid first. Anybody else who lent them money, like say a fictional China or a fictional India, they get bumped to the back of the queue and maybe instructed to write off maybe 70% or more of their fictional debt owed from a fictional Sri Lanka. The IMF gets their money first. And if the country indebted to the IMF in my fictional account wants to default on that, all 190 member countries simply won't do business with them. They just say no. Because in my fictional account, the board members of the IMF are also pretty much the same guys as the WEF and the WHO and the UN and stuff in my fictional manuscript. But here's the thing, in my fictional manuscript, this is how the IMF, well, it's in part what they do and in part how they get their money back in my fictional manuscript. The IMF has the power, while the fictional Sri Lanka, for example, is in debt. The IMF then tells that indebted country what to do and how to fix their economies. That's right, they tell the government of the fictional Sri Lanka what they can and can't trade in, with who, at what rate, and the valuation of their country's dollar is. This is how it works in my fictional manuscript. So basically, in my fictional manuscript, the IMF owns the country and tells them what to do politically and in all senses. So, in my fictional manuscript that I'm sending to my fictional publisher, Sri Lanka is applying to the IMF for bailout money. My fictional Sri Lanka, of course, has imploded. You know, they're broke, and in a lot of other problems. So in my fictional story, the IMF shows up and says, well, we have a boatload of bread here, but if you want any, you're going to have to sign up for the digital identification program and the we call it the fictional Chinese like social credit scoring system. And in my fictional story, hungry people are desperate people. So, anyways, we'll see what my fictional publisher has to say about my fictional manuscript. And that's story time for today with Uncle Carl.